Welcome to the latest episode of Five on the Floor on the Five Reasons Sports Network. Thanks for joining us on your favorite podcast app, Red Circle, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. You can also find us on Podfollow now. And the Five Reasons YouTube channel. Make sure you hit like, subscribe, and turn the notifications on. Also, check us out on Off the Floor. For primary hosts of Five on the Floor, give you text directly to your phone, Q&As, inside information, little tidbits, behind-the-scenes stuff. It's all there, including contests on Prize Picks. Oh, boy, I forgot to do that one today. They're going to be mad at me. Well, we'll get to it tomorrow. Go to winnow.app/off the floor. That's winnow.app/off the floor. Also, check out the great sponsors of the Five Reasons Sports Network. I mentioned them already, so I might as well mention them again. Prize Picks, use the code 5, F-I-V-E. Get that initial deposit matched up to $100. NFL preseason games. Yes, you can actually play Prize Picks on that, as well as the futures. NBA futures are already there. FIBA basketball is going to be on there. I know a lot of our listeners are going to want to play that. So check out Prize Picks. Use the code 5, F-I-V-E. Get that initial deposit matched up to $100. And now, today's episode.
Down the bitch gang. Yeah. Five on the floor, ride for my dogs. Where here's the thing, you can check the score. Hustle hard, couple scars, wearing bubble frogs. Just like Butler said, you in trouble, y'all. Kept the flow playing, got it all banned. Y'all seen the block, stop with one hand. And Pat we trust, it's power have the guts. We're here to bring the heat, y'all can hang it up.
Welcome to Five on the Floor, a daily insider show on the Miami Heat and the NBA, featuring Ethan Skolnick, Greg Sylvander, and Alex Toledo, plus others from the Five Reasons Sports Network.
All right, welcome back to Five on the Floor. Here's today's floor plan. I got Brady Hawk. You can follow him at Brady Hawk 305. Got Timothy Bain, our Bahamian correspondent. I want to get to this with you, actually, Tim, because I'm wondering where training camp's going to be this year. So actually, we'll start there in a second. Well, we're going to talk about the schedule, which is not preseason or training camp, the regular season schedule. A lot of it had been leaked. The rest of it came out today. There are a few interesting tidbits in it. We'll go through it. This is one of those things, though. It's like the NFL schedule day where they make a big deal of it. I mean, you know who the opponents are. In the NBA especially, you always know who the opponents are going to be. It's just a matter of when you play them during the year, sort of how it plays out for your team. So we'll get into the ramifications of the schedule itself quickly. But then we're going to get into this question. Does any of this mean anything for a franchise that just finished 7th, ended up in a play-in, lost a play-in game, and then pulled two huge upsets in the Eastern Conference playoffs, Milwaukee and Boston, teams that were way ahead of them, in addition to beating the Knicks, to get all the way to the NBA Finals? Is the regular season something that the Heat should even take seriously this year? And is there a difference whether they get Dame or they don't, and whether they do take it seriously? But first, let's get to the schedule itself. So give me one thing that jumped out to you today as you saw it, for the Heat's perspective.
I didn't expect the games 2, 3, and 4 to be on the road for a team that was in the finals. Mm-hmm. But we already knew we were opening against Detroit. So I just expected a bit of some home cooking, but that was a bit of a shock to me. 12 of the first 14 games are on the road to start the season off. So I think we'll know what type of season we're going to have after game 15, I feel. Well,
I think it's 12 out of 17, right? Is that right?
12, sorry, I misquoted. Yeah, 12 out of 17. Sorry, yeah.
12 out of 17. Actually, 12. It's the first one's at home against Detroit, and then 12 out of 16 on the road. I'm going to have to look at what that I wanted to say American Airlines Arena, what the Kaseya Center schedule looks like, because my guess is there's some concerts or something else in there, or tractor pull or circus. I mean, that's usually what sends them on the road for that long. But when you look at that, it's not just the road. It's the fact that they play Boston and Milwaukee on the road in the first week and a half. So that's an interesting test from the very start. We knew, obviously, about the Christmas Day game. That had been leaked, that they're playing Philadelphia at 8 o'clock. The other thing that jumps out to me, and then I'll go to Brady on this, in addition to all the road games early, is the national TV games. 24. I don't really count NBA TV.
Right, so it's 16 without NBA TV, up from 11 last year.
So they're expecting more, but it's nowhere close to, and I don't know how many of these are NBA TV, but 41 national TV games for Golden State. I mean, every other game. And the Lakers, 40. So
basically, it's the Curry and LeBron show.
Exactly. And I think there's a larger story to be told here that has nothing to do with the Heat, who I think probably got about the right amount, maybe could have gotten a few more. But about the young stars, potential young stars of the game are not featured on national television. even Minnesota, I don't know much about Minnesota, but like Anthony Edwards has a chance to be a top 10 player this year. He's not going to be on national TV very much. There's a lot of examples of that. Brady, because they just want to keep shoving LeBron down everybody's throat, which, I get it. But when LeBron and AD are missing 30 games, and a lot of those games are national TV games, you're going to get a lot of Gabe Vincent. Brady, what jumped out to you?
I mean, while you were talking about like league-wide schedule, I think Toronto had the least with 3, which is wild. Like with all the teams that are like bad teams in this league, and Toronto gets like stuck as the unwatchable team, was just kind of funny. But in terms of just like stuff to see, they start the season. The big thing is the fact second and third games are back to back. Like they don't even get a break. Jimmy's already missing a game in the first week. Like that's what stuck out to me. Like that's amazing how they just schemed that up immediately. I don't know. I agree with you. I think it's funny how like the schedule is always hyped up. Like football is different though, because you get to figure out it's you don't play every team. It's just whatever month you play whatever random team always feels kind of weird. But yeah, the fact that they're on the road so often, I guess to begin the year, I think it stood out a little bit. But I think the big takeaway, I said this on Twitter when it came out, was the fact that if there was any team where this doesn't matter, it's Miami, just from what we saw last season, that after game 82 is probably when it really matters most. But as much as I say that to joke around, they have to actually not have that mindset, because I think that could be actually scary, Ethan, because we talked about this before, I think on previous podcasts, that if they have that mindset, we're like, oh, we could be a 7 seed again and just roll over every team in the playoffs. And maybe they can, honestly, after what we've seen. But I don't know if you're going to roll the dice on that season over season and have that type of mindset. So you're still going to have this type of needing to play pretty well, I guess, in the regular season. And I guess the start too, it's a little rough. I look at you mentioned the Christmas game. I think after that is immediately after Christmas is their road trip where they play Golden State, Utah, Clippers, Lakers, Suns. So I think that's the same thing. That it's actually around the same time, I think, because I think on New Year's Eve last year was the Jazz game. So it's pretty similar. So yeah, I don't really know what to take of it, but it will be a pretty heavy home stretch in March and April. So I think that's favorable down the stretch of kind of that last month and a half, where Jimmy now is playing probably less games than he probably was throughout the season, where now you're asking these other guys to carry you. It's easier when you're relying on your role players, especially with Miami, when you're playing in front of your home crowd. So I guess that's kind of the main things that stood out.
Well, a couple of things. They're going to be spending Thanksgiving in New York, it appears, because that's in a 5-game East swing. They've got 2 against Chicago, 1 against Cleveland. Then they go to New York on that Friday and Saturday after Thanksgiving. New Year's, they'll be on the road. I actually think Eric Spoelstra is going to like the early road slate. He likes this bonding thing early in the season. I don't know if players will be bonding with each other who will not be there in a few months after that. So that's what we'll get into after the break. But I think it does set up favorably in the fact that we know that Eric has typically had very strong records in March, and it does coincide with, with this team getting home a lot in March. So I think that is a positive for them. And again, I think what you mentioned, Brady, and again, we'll touch on this more after the break, but is that, how much can you coast? In the Eastern Conference, I don't see a very strong conference right now. We talked about this on Playback. It is swung back to the West. More of the interesting young teams to me are in the West, whether it's OKC or some of the others. Obviously, Sacramento may have overachieved last year. You look at some of their metrics, it looks like they may come to earth a little bit. But
they were the healthiest team in the NBA.
That's the biggest thing. That's by far. That's the biggest thing. And they didn't really do much to add to it. So I wonder if they'll stick up there. But you're still talking about Denver. You're still talking about now a potential, we'll see what they look like on the court, but a potentially fortified Phoenix with at least Durant from the beginning of the year, and now you've added Beal. You look at, potentially the Lakers being healthier than they were last year. Maybe the Clippers are healthier. There's more. It's shifted west. Like I don't see a team in the East to me that's gotten significantly better. I mean, some of it is Milwaukee, Giannis being even more determined and focused. Boston switching out Smart for Porzingis, who was already hurt. Philadelphia, we don't know what that bleep show is going to end up looking like once the season actually starts. Atlanta has not gotten better. Toronto, you mentioned, I actually think they could be okay, but they lost Van Vliet. Chicago has not gotten better. I mean, there's just, you look at the East, there's not a hell of a lot there. I mean, Cleveland added Max. I mean, that's pretty much all they did after flaming out in the playoffs. And the Knicks are virtually the same roster that they were last year, just a couple of tweaks. So I feel like Miami could coast a little bit and still be okay, but I don't know that that's the approach that they want to take. All right, I do want to mention a couple sponsors here of the 5 Reasons Sports Network, and then after that, we will get into some of the specifics of this because I think that as you look at Dame or no Dame, I think there is a difference in the way that they may handle it. We do want to mention our friends over at Mosaics, though. Stones and more. You can find them at mosaics.com. That's MOZIACS.com. A family-owned business serving the community for over 20 years. They got dedicated customer service. They're wholesale distributors with the best quality of porcelain and ceramic tiles, along with a wide variety of high-end mosaics with unique modern design. So check them out at mosaics.com, 305-828-0940. We also want to mention our betting partner. It's Better Edge. Use the code 5RSN. That's the number 5RSN. You get $20 to play. Why do we recommend this one? It's legal. We know in the state of Florida, it's still not legal to gamble with these sites. You can gamble on Better Edge, and you can do it in 44 other states as well. You can find the line that you want. The reason is that you're playing against others who use it. You're not playing against a bookie or the app itself. So check them out at betteredge.com. Join our contest. Use the code 5RSN. So let's get to this question because I feel like every episode we do is framed this way now. Okay. But Timmy, do you think there's any difference in the way that the Heat, let's take a couple different scenarios. Dame joins before training camp. Okay. Let's say some of the pieces we've talked about going out, go out. Hero, Robinson, perhaps Lowry, perhaps Jovic, perhaps Jaquez, perhaps Caleb, but we don't think it's going to be all of that. Okay. But some combination of these pieces. Dame comes before training camp. Does the regular season mean more or less then?
I think it means more because you have not only the issue of integrating the big three of Dame, Bam, and Jimmy, but these players who are apparently waiting in Miami, like Kelly Oubre and Christian Wood, like that's so. I made the joke earlier, like a month ago, saying we already lost like 7 players from the last team, so they can't complain about running it back. But having about 9 or 10 new players, regardless of their caliber, is still a issue. Spo is the greatest of all time. No, sorry, Pop is the greatest of all time. Spo is the greatest currently, and even so, that's still a lot for him to work through. So I think it's necessary to use these games as a building block because again, we wait until February. You lose maybe 5 players with the game, and you have to then pick up players off the wire. I don't think March. We saw it happen for the bubble where Iggy and Jay just did not fit, but they clicked after the bubble. Like you need time to gel. So I do think it's more important to have that time, and yeah, those games matter for the regular season for sure.
Brady, do you think they matter more or less? Because I guess I understand everything Timmy's saying, and I tend to lean that way, but I guess the counter argument is, well, as long as you get Dame, Jimmy, and Bam healthy in the playoffs, like who wants to match up with that team? So which way would you say?
I just think if you have Dame, that I don't think we're even having this discussion because I think they're going to be a great regular season team if they have Dame. Like, I don't think it's really hard for me to see that. You can talk about that big three in the playoffs, but like, even if Jimmy's taking nights off, like that's a tough regular season unit to run around, especially if, there's maybe not as much depth because you're sending a lot out. So like, that's where I think the counter argument is that you mentioned is like the fact that they've gotten through regular season with their depth and they shrink down to 7 or 8 in the playoffs. If you're losing that depth to get Dame, maybe you don't have as many options and maybe it's tougher in the regular season, but I still don't think that would be a problem. So I think that's kind of the issue. I think is on the flip side, which I know you're probably going to get to next, was the fact that if you don't have Dame in the regular season, we're going to be having the discussion about things getting stale or maybe things being a bit awkward, let's say, at certain points. Or it just feels like there might be, I guess, some of the things that we talked about on last podcast, like more lenient on the guys like Jovic or a Jaquez or even like a Richardson that can maybe bring a new life to a team, whereas like they're going to be needing that because if not, there's going to be staleness to it. And that's where I think things get weird. So maybe it means more. The regular season will mean more if they don't have Dame to an extent for that reason, just because of the fact that I don't think they can afford to like have a team that they brought back again. And as much as in the back of their heads, like, oh, we'll get to the postseason, we can run through some people. It's just the fact that you're sitting at a spot where it's not like running it back a year, you're running it back twice. Whereas I think it could get a little weird in the regular season.
Well, and look, this team has, this franchise has kind of taken contradictory approaches to pursuing seeds in the regular season, depending on what the group was, right? Like the big three Heat, I believe, only got the number 1 seed twice. Is that correct? I think for the 4 years, the first year they didn't have it. Chicago had it. They had it the third year for sure. The second year, I believe they had it. Fourth year, they didn't have it. Correct? Am I right about that? Indiana.
I'll double check, but I'm thinking 100% correct.
Yeah. Okay. So they took an approach there, but it was like, okay, as long as you get a top 4 seed, right? Like we're we have LeBron, we have Dwayne, we have Chris. Like that's okay. There are other teams who have gunned for seed a little bit. And last year, I don't want to let anybody tell you that they were happy finishing in the play-in. Like that was they when they started to slip and they could not get any consistency, players, and we talked about it, seemed disinterested at times. Then the goal at first it was goal, okay, try to grab a top 4. And then when you sort of fell out of that, it was, all right, just stay out of the play-in. Well, they didn't do either. And then they ended up in exactly the situation we warned about the whole year, which is that they have one clunker game, which we've seen them do at home. They had that game against Atlanta. And then Chicago, they were literally 3 minutes away from none of the other stuff happening, that they were going to get eliminated there. I have to think, no matter what the group is, that they will coach and work this team in a way to avoid the damn play-in again. That was harrowing enough. You don't want to repeat that. But I don't know that a number 1 seed matters anymore. I mean, do you think, let's say they were in a position where they're not going to be in a number 1 seed position if they don't get Dame. Okay. I don't think so. I think this team is better than maybe others believe it is. I think it's better than it was in training camp last year. The team they bring into camp without Dame. I firmly believe that, but I don't think they're number 1 seed material. I don't think they'd be in the chase. I think with Dame, they could be, honestly. Do you think in that case, I'll go to you first on this, Brady, do you think it matters like to finish ahead of Boston and Milwaukee if you don't have Dame?
Yeah.
If you have Dame, I'm sorry.
I do, just because of the fact, we're always, if you're viewing it from this perspective, you're always going to try to find the easiest path, even though it feels like Miami wants the toughest path, as we saw last season.
Like the meme where I'd say, give me harder battles.
Right, give me harder battles.
Jimmy wants it the toughest way possible. He wants no easy matchup, it feels like. But if you have Dame in that scenario, I definitely think you want the first seed, just for the fact that you don't want to be in that 2-3 range and you have to play Boston and Milwaukee. Like if you could be in a scenario where you can get the 1 and then Boston, Milwaukee, or maybe I can't really project this as well, because what if Boston, Milwaukee slips to 4 and then a random team is in 3? So I guess we could play a scenario all day, but ideally you want the 1 seed just for that. And the fact that you want to be, as much as they walked into so many, you feel like game 1 after game 1 in this last run and just beating up these teams on the road, you want to be at home on any matchup. You do not want to be going into a game 7 in Boston again. It's just going to be, the energy in there is a little bit different, especially after what happened last year. There's going to be that get back mentality. You definitely want to try to have that home court advantage, but it's also trying to stay out of a certain bracket. So I think that'll be an interesting thing to monitor, just because the question becomes, and I don't want to sit here and act like Jimmy doesn't play in the regular season, like at all, but or it doesn't play high level in the regular season. But let's just say if Jimmy playing in a coasting version and then you have Dame and Bam kind of leading the way in a regular season, can that get you a 1 seed? And I kind of feel like it can. It kind of feels that way. But also,
especially when you have the Bucks who didn't do anything, the Sixers who never do anything.
They may do something to me, but it may not make them better. That's the thing.
But they're also a good regular season team. It feels like a lot of the time, Milwaukee, if they stay healthy, and that's the big question. So
right,
goes the kind of the element.
But they didn't get any younger, Milwaukee. That's the thing too. So I don't know that the injury situation is going to get better. And again, Boston just added an injury-prone guy in Porzingis, who is literally already injured. Everything that was warned about there is problematic. And I believe that Boston is going to feel the loss of Smart more in the playoffs than the regular season anyway. By the time they get there, I just can't, Timmy, I guess as we pivot a different direction here, but I just don't see who in the East, other than Boston or Milwaukee, who is going to run away from this Heat team no matter what. Like if I look at the teams that finished ahead of them last year, I attribute it to Miami just underperforming in a lot of different ways. Like I in some of the losses,
like the Deadman minutes.
Yeah, the Deadman minutes, the horrible losses to bad teams, but it's not like you look at the teams ahead of them. Okay, Boston, Milwaukee were clearly better regular season teams, no question. Okay, I'm not going to argue against that. Philadelphia, as Brady mentioned, even with Doc, they were a good regular season team. They did find some things last year that worked for them. but then Harden turned into Harden in the playoffs again. Okay, and that basically sunk them against Boston.
And Embiid played through an injury again.
But the things that we predicted, but again, they were better. Look, I thought they'd be a 1 seed coming out last year. I think I picked them as a 1 seed. Before the season, because they typically are a good regular season. Okay, but look, Cleveland's not run away from anybody. Like, I like the roster, but that's not a 55 win team. I don't think. Okay,
they could be a decent regular season team though. That feels like one of those sneaky good regular season teams.
Okay, are they? But the Knicks, the Knicks, the Nets. I
don't really understand why there's so much hype about the Knicks right now, because they lost Obi, they got Da Vinci. They have probably their best guard rotation since you covered them in the 90s. Yeah, so that's cool. But I still don't like Randall. I still don't like Mitch. I don't see the hype.
Randall's the big problem to me too. Like, RJ looks like he's making some progress. But it's like with RJ, you get one really good game and one game
and like three. Then he shoots 30 for 40 tonight, and then like 2 for 20 the next game.
But until that team transitions even more from Randall to Brunson, which is kind of what happened against the Heat, but it was too late. I see their max is 45 wins. Which, by the way, if the Dame trade happens and Tyler ends up in Brooklyn, I think the Nets are better than the Knicks.
Oh, for sure.
I mean, if your starting lineup is, let's say they keep Dinwiddie, right? If your starting lineup is Dinwiddie, Hero, Bridges, Cam Johnson, or Finney Smith, and Claxton, Brady, I like that team better than the Knicks.
Actually. I even like the Simmons, Hero.
Oh, well, here's Simmons too, right? Who apparently is in the greatest shape that anybody's ever been in, according to social media.
Shout out to Mark Jones.
Yes, Mark. I think Mark got a call from a certain agent. But Brady, but the Nets or Knicks. If the Nets get Hero, are they better than the Knicks?
Yeah, I definitely did.
I like the team.
Go ahead, Brady.
And it was a regular season team. I was just gonna say that's a really just a bunch of young guys that can go out there and get buckets, and the fact they have depth, like. That's a tough regular season. I mean, they were a good regular season team last year. Like they played into, what was it, a 6 seed? So like the fact that you're adding that and then adding Tyler and all you're not losing any valuable kind of player in the rotation. Like, yeah, 100%. I think they're in that, what would it be? Kind of a 4-5 seed, I would think. And then they kind of battle it out and they'll find a tough matchup with probably either Cleveland or New York. That feels like the way that would line up.
Take to me.
Go ahead,
I actually picked the Pacers over the Knicks too, personally.
I think of all those teams down there that are kind of in rebuild mode, the Pacers are the most interesting, I think. But I don't know that their overall depth is good enough. But I would put them at. See, the thing in the East is there are some teams like Detroit, Orlando, where there's talent where you're going to start showing some signs of life. I don't think Charlotte does. But those two, but they're not ready to win more than 30 games, right?
But those are the teams that Miami's going to drop games against. 100%.
Oh, sure.
So I don't know why, by the way, we started this off by looking at the Boston and Milwaukee games. We should be looking at Charlotte and Orlando.
Well, the opener against Detroit. They lost the opener to Chicago last year, and then kept losing to Chicago until they finally beat them in the playing game. But that opener against Detroit, like if they lose that one by 8 and Dame's not here yet, like that is going to be a full panic mode on Twitter. And that's the other thing I want to get to.
2 days before Boston.
Oh, exactly. Right, exactly. One thing here, though. If the Heat won 48 games, where did they finish in the East?
5th.
See, I think they finished 3rd. Nobody won 60 last year, right? See, I think 48 wins gets you 3rd seed, probably. I think in this conference. Not in the West, I don't think.
In the East, 3rd, 4th.
In the West. All right, so let's go to this. Let me give you one more scenario here before we close. And thanks to our sponsors, Stones and More, Better Edge, Price Picks. If they are middling close to the trade deadline, let's say, and again, we're looking, trade deadline is later than it was at one point. I don't know how many games it is. Maybe they're 28 and 25, something like that. Okay. Maybe there might be a few more games played. There are a few games over 500. Do you think, that makes them more desperate to make a trade for Dame? And do you think that affects Dame wanting to come at all? In other words, is there anything to be said for the fact that if they don't get Dame before the season, that what they're doing the first sort of 3-4 months could affect whether or not they go all in for Dame and maybe, give in to Cronin's demands, particularly if other teams maybe emerge as suitors, which I still don't think is going to happen, but it seems like that's what Portland's betting on. Or the fact that maybe they just won't look attractive. Like maybe Jimmy has an injury, right, in the first 4 months, or Bam has an injury, and then all of a sudden Dame doesn't want to come. Brady.
I just can't believe you just threw that out there and just said
if I say it's going to happen, it's not. So I
don't know. You're walking a thin line here, but maybe I guess you could make that case. I think the biggest case to be made in that specific scenario is Tyler in terms of his play, just because of the fact that I'll say it 100 times, like the fact that his value during a season compared to in the offseason every single year since his rookie year has been like on two separate ends of the level. Like it's just like it turns offseason time and everybody forgets who Tyler Hero was and we talk about other teams and his value and this and this. So all of a sudden he starts playing well in the regular season. He's averaging 20 plus points per game. He has kind of added size. He starts scoring at different levels. Maybe there's another suitors that jump in and they say, we want to jump in as the third team because we're really interested in Tyler making this push. Like that I could see that scenario. Then all of a sudden, maybe that pushes the thing for Dame a little bit, but I don't know. I still think, as much as we talk about it, I know this is something we talk about in every episode, is the fact that it really feels like it may not be as much on Miami's record as it really is just Dame. It literally has to be just Dame, because what if Dame starts playing and they just get comfortable and Dame's not really pushing the issue at the trade deadline, and then here you are just kind of sitting around like, okay, do we wait this out? We try to make a move around the edges and try to get like another low-level rotation player? Like, what do you do? So I don't know. I still think it comes down to Dame, but I think the Tyler perspective is interesting.
Tyler perspective is interesting. By the way, Tyler's having a camp this weekend, but he's not speaking to the media. So we'll see. I mean, he's been active on social media and Spaces and other places, but apparently he's not going to be speaking to the media there. But Timmy, let me throw this at you because Brady raised an interesting point, and here we'll close. So could we argue that if Dame is not traded to the Heat by the start of the regular season, that Portland's regular season is actually more important to Miami fans than Miami's regular season is?
100%. 100%, because you go to training camp and you start the season, then now you watch. And interesting enough, everything is just talking about Scoot. You've not heard Dame's name at all in the last 3 weeks. Everything is now Scoot's places. I mean, sure Dame doesn't care because he asked for a trade. But I could see now where he's the star of the team, but like the media are gonna treat you. They know you're gonna be one foot out the door. So I feel like every game is going to be so scrutinized. It's going to hurt Scoot. It's going to hurt Scoot's development because not only are you the number two, not only are you going to be compared to Wemby for the rest of your career and Brandon Miller, now they scrutinize every single game to see if this is the one where you mess up so badly or the team messes up so badly that they trade them. So I think we're sure when that gets uncomfortable, untenable for Scoot is when teams get traded. But yeah, at the end of the day, we know this team, Hero is going to play ball regardless. Jimmy is Jimmy, Bam is Bam. So the Heat season itself won't affect the trade. It's squarely on what Portland does, and then new Maxima and Jeremy Grant.
New Maxima and Jeremy Grant. I'll say the other side of this, and you mentioned the Tyler part of this, Brady. It's trade value going up. But there also is the possibility, and we're already seeing this from some fans, a lot of fans. I look on our comments on YouTube, and when we did the Jovic pod, the majority of the fans that commented there were like, why are we even talking about trading him? I've given up on the whole Dame thing already, that we're focusing on it too much. I mean, there is a chance, and I that Tyler just comes out and plays so well. Okay.
100%.
Right? And it's working so well that you start to get, I don't know if it creates second thoughts in the Heat front office. I'm not sure because we're still talking about Dame Lillard. But I can see a larger segment of the fan base saying, why do we need to do this? Why do we need to go get a guy who's making $63 million at the end of his contract? Like, it feels like there could be a lean that way. And I think the way you saw people react to Tyler at Miami Pro League, and this point's been made by our friend Austin, Chef Trilly, and I think he's right about this, is that the way Twitter feels about, or X or whatever it is, feels about Tyler Hero is not the way the general fan base feels about Tyler Hero. And you've talked about this, Brady. I think you and I was, it's different in the arena when Tyler's getting going than even when Jimmy's getting going.
100%. The only time like when somebody enters, like in terms of him coming in, the only time I remember hearing something probably similar applause is when Dwayne came in, like when he was coming off the bench. Like that's the only comparison because that is literally the love he gets. And as you mentioned, Trilly, he kind of talks about the way he reciprocates it. Like Tyler loves it down here. He loves Miami. Right. So like he's not a guy that's like going to be in trade discussions. He's going to go into the season here and like walk through it and be angry. Like, no, he's going to channel this and have like probably a monster season. Like that's the way he's dealt with this since high school when he was like transferred and kind of left Wisconsin and then ended up going with Kentucky and he had all the fans in the crowd. Like this is what makes him who he is. So for 100%, I think you're going to see that. And maybe all of a sudden you're toward the trade deadline, you're not 28-25. Maybe you have a much better record because Tyler's kind of taken another leap and he's playing really well. So we could play that, I guess, hypothetical as well.
That would be very interesting if you get to that point and then you're like, Joe, we're really not interested in making a deal now.
or they try to do where they keep Tyler and be like, no, we keep him. You
well, yeah, exactly. You take some of our other scraps, which is the scenario that Heat fans would want at that point, for sure. But that still seems to be a little bit pie in the sky. I don't think it's too pie in the sky to say Tyler's going to have a great year, wherever he is. And I still feel like the Nets are the best situation for him if it's not here. But if he does get off to that start, I think it's not fair to say the casual Heat fan because Heat fans are engaged all over the place. But I think those who are not upset, Twitter obsessed 24/7, Tyler Hero's approval rating with them is a lot higher than it is with that group. And I just have it's a weird hunch I have that he's going to come out killing it in preseason and the start of the season if Dame's not here yet. And we're going to have a different narrative and dialogue going on, I think, at that stage. But, you try to get Dame Lillard any way you can. That's the way I still view it. But I'm going to be able to see the other side of that argument somewhat. All right. Thanks to Brady. Thanks to Timmy. Oh, one question, by the way. What do you know about this? Because I know the Heat are still trying to get down your way for training camp, but it's against league rules. You can't go 2 straight years overseas, right?
Right. The soonest we can come back is next year.
Okay, so that's for sure because I know that there was some discussion with the Heat about trying to
get I know for sure 24, 25 the plan is for the Heat to come back.
Okay, all right. Well, I'll see you then. Well, I'll see you in the States before that.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks to these guys. Greg and Alex will be back in the mix here over the next couple of days. We are going to do a straight Tyler Hero episode, although I feel like we just kind of hit it. Have a good night, everybody.
Thank you for listening to the 5 on the Floor on the 5 Regional Sports Network.